All right, well, we'll get started. People will continue joining as we go through this. Thanks for joining us this evening. And if you haven't already, download the scorecard and also answer the poll if you can. I'll leave that up here for a moment. We're going to do a very high-level overview. It's an aggregation of what we covered, Adam and I covered, and we'll introduce ourselves in the morning, what we covered in a couple of different podcast episodes of the How of Business. But we're going to walk you through it more step by step. The scorecard is a big part of that to help you at the end of this have some actionable items that you can take away and apply either to your website or to keep in mind as you begin to build a website if you don't currently have one. And by the way, most business owners, when I say most, the statistics show that more than 50% of small business owners don't have a website. There's a lot of reasons for that, and some of them are the topics that we're going to address today to hopefully minimize some of the confusion and avoid having to spend lots of money to get a website. So our agenda today is we're going to do a quick overview, then we're going to touch on these key points, and they'll follow along with the scorecard, and that's where you can make some notes of either things that you want to take action on immediately and or also give yourself a score. I'll explain the scorecard in a moment. We're going to talk about design and usability, security, search engine optimization, another website checkup tool that's free that you can use. We'll summarize, and then we'll open it for questions and answers. We got started a little late because I was having a couple of technical issues, but we'll certainly be done within an hour, and then we'll stay on beyond that to answer any and all questions. So who are we? I think you know us because you found us and found out about this webinar either from the podcast or from one of our mailings. I'm Henry Lopez. I'm an entrepreneur, current business owner, a business coach, and of course, host of the How of Business podcast, as well as co-host of the How of Car Washing podcast. Adam Kirk is on as well. Adam, if you'll introduce yourself briefly.
Hi, great to be here with you, Henry. Like Henry said, I'm Adam Kirk, founder and CEO of Usta Small Business Solutions, a friend and partner with Henry in a lot of different things, and very excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thanks for being with us. Adam and I met Adam. He was a client of mine, and then I've been a client of his. He's been on the show, obviously, as we just talked about, and you all may have listened to a couple of our episodes. And he is one of my partners. He is who I refer people to when they need either a website developed or help with their existing website. I've gone to him for help with my existing websites. I have multiple websites for my different businesses. All right, let's keep moving here. So let's start with the scorecard. Hopefully you've got it, or you're either looking at it, you've printed it. Let me know in the in the chat. I don't see any comments of any issues being able to access the scorecard. So follow along with the scorecard. And the idea is that at the end of this presentation, you've got some notes in that 1 through 3 section and maybe some boxes ticked off or highlighted in the 4 and 5 columns. And then a score yourself. Nobody's going to see this. This is just for yourself internally. Score yourself in each of these 5 categories as to how you, based on our conversation today, how you think you're doing, how your current website is by comparison. And then at the end, we're going to point you to another tool. You see a comment about it at the top of the scorecard that'll give you a more in-depth analysis of your website. But this is your actionable takeaway. I would like you to take notes and write down things that you're going to do after this webinar to help you make your website better. So what makes a good and healthy website? Let's talk about those things at a high level. I'm going to speak to it mostly, and then Adam's going to chime in here at different points throughout the presentation. In our opinion, design and usability is one of those things at the top of the list, and we'll show you some examples of what we mean by that. There's a book that I read early on that now is on its 3rd edition called Don't Make Me Think. It's very easy to read, very well written. And I'm not saying you got to go read that, but Steve talks about the need for a website to be obvious. It should be self-evident. People shouldn't have to struggle with, what is this website about and where do I go and what do I do? What do they want me to do here? So that's something that's key throughout in your design and usability. Content is, of course, key. Content is king. It has to be relevant. It has to be fresh. It has to be good content. Of course, it has to include some keywords, but it has to be what people are looking for. And we'll talk more about what Google is looking for And content is what it's all about. More than whether your site is pretty or has images, all of those things are important, but the content is the key thing. How fast is it? Believe it or not, this is an important component. Often we might have a lot of pictures and videos or other things technically that make the site load very slowly, and that can hurt us from being able to be found, and Google doesn't like it either. And that's primarily because Google has begun for some time now to optimize and prefer pages that are fast and are responsive, meaning that they appear well and correctly on mobile phones and other smaller devices. So that's what responsiveness means. That's more than just your screen will shrink down and I can zoom in. That doesn't count anymore. It has to be something that really turns into a different menu for navigation when you're looking at it on a small screen. Security, we're going to touch on that because that is huge right now. If you don't have the proper security features on your website, then you're going to get less and less found because Google is going to penalize your site. And then on-page optimization, I'm going to let Adam speak to this because it gets a little bit technical, although we're going to keep this conversation at a non-technical level. But explain, if you will, Adam, briefly what on-page optimization is.
Yeah, on-page optimization is simply put the skeleton of your website. I mean, you build a house, you have the frames, you have the studs in place. It basically holds up your house. It's not seen when the house is finished. The on-page optimization of your site is very similar to that. It's the backbone of your site, helps your site function properly. It's not always seen from the outside. It doesn't make your site look pretty. It makes your site function well. There's a lot of components that go into that. We're going to touch on a few of them in a few minutes, but that's basically what it involves.
Absolutely. All right, let's look at some examples. This is Adam's page for his business, Ustas. And I want to use a couple of different sites to highlight some of the things we're talking about here from a design and usability perspective. First is navigation. Now, the menu at the top is obvious. I think most websites probably have that now, but it's more than that, and I want you to think about that. How easy is it to navigate your site? And when somebody goes a couple of layers deep into your site, how easy is it for them to get back home? If they click on the logo on the top left, does that take them home? Is there a home link like you see here in this example? Is it obvious where they're at? Does it highlight where they are at in your site? All of those things seem simple, but are very necessary to making it functional. More important, though, is there a clear and concise description as to what this site is all about. And as you can see here, where in Adam's case, it's very simple, to the point. They do custom websites and marketing for small business. And there's some additional content that explains a little bit more about what this site is about. There's no confusion when you land at this site as to what it's about, and then what is the call to action that he wants you to take here. In this case, what Adam would like for you to do is to call. So that call to action is key, in addition to easy to read content and very obvious, being able to understand what this site is about. Here's another example. This is one of my sites. I've been working on this one for a bit, and Adam has helped me as well as some other people. But this concept of using conversational copy, I think, is an important one. I recently had a guest on the podcast, episode 217, and we chatted specifically about conversational copy. If you haven't listened to it, it's worth listening to. He's a great guest and great information. But one of the things we talked about in that episode is he took what I had written as my top description on this website and gave me another version, which is what you see here, which is much more conversational. And I have a tendency to do that. I have a corporate background, so I have a tendency to use those corporate words that are big and sound important, but don't really mean anything or sound the same as anybody else's website. So keep it conversational. Of course, it needs to be appropriate to the tone of your business, but making something that's easy, that's obvious to read, and easy to understand what it is that I'm offering on this particular website. Again, if you have any questions as we're going along, feel free to put those in the chat window, and we'll either stop to answer them or get to them at the end of the show, at the end of the webinar, rather. Here's another example then on my website of a clear call to action. And so the call to action is critical. I would say that when we look at websites, when Adam looks at existing websites, this is one of the biggest problem areas. And so I really want you to assess, if you're looking at your scorecard now, is your call to action clear? And there are all types of calls to action. Remember on Adam's site, it was a phone number. For me on this website, I would like you to come to a free webinar to learn about our car wash operating system for the car wash industry. It could be an email capture. It could be using what are called lead magnets, like maybe an ebook or a paper that you've written or an article or a checklist. And in return for the customer or the client or the visitor being able to download it, you'll capture an email. It might be the ability to easily schedule an appointment if you provide a service, for example, or a coupon or a special. For my frozen yogurt shop, it might be a coupon. So that call to action is for them to come in and use that coupon. Ideally, I've put some kind of coupon code on it that then I can track when I receive it at the shop. So a clear call to action is probably one of the key things. So if you're following along then on the scorecard, rate yourself there and make a couple of notes on the clear call to action, on the content of your quality of your content rather, and on design and usability. Again, those are things like, in design and usability are things like the layout. Do you have large blocks of text that no one is going to read? One of the things I didn't mention that we know, and there's studies that have been done on this, is that people scan websites. They're not there to read a book. They're going to very quickly scan and decide if that's the site that they're looking for. Does it have the information that they need, the product or service that they need? And keep in mind that most people are doing this. Most people are going to your site on their phone. So it's important that you all look at your websites on your phone, not just on your PC or on your laptop at home. Anything else you would add there, Adam, before I summarize here on the scorecard?
No, I think that's great. I think I've talked with so many small business owners lately who would, I've clarified this with them, clear call to action from a marketing standpoint, very clear, very simple is the key here. Simple and clear, period.
The other thing is, and you'll see it as the last checkbox in column 4 or 5 in the call to action, is, are you tracking conversion? Conversion is our measure of whether our website is working. Is it generating leads? Is it bringing customers in the door? It's harder to judge that depending on the type of business that you are. At our car wash, for example, we have an informational website. A lot of people go there to find out if we're open and where we're located and see if maybe we have any specials. But there's nothing there that's easy for us to track. Somebody went to the website and then they showed up at our car wash. So that's a lot harder. Some of the things that you can do there is we might have a special or a coupon and track the return on usage on that coupon. It would be a coupon I don't have anywhere else, or it would have a unique coupon code. In the case of Adam, he's got a phone number, and so one of the first questions he's going to ask if you call him is, how did you find us? So it is a little harder for an informational website, but if you've got any kind of a download or an email capture, you'll be able to track how effectively people are taking the desired action on your website. So take a moment now to score yourself here in the first 3 categories. Make a couple of notes of actionable items that you, based on what we've chatted about here, that you think you need to improve your website in. And then give yourself a score between 1 and 5. And be honest, we're not going to look at these scores, but assess yourself right now. The after column is meant for after you've made some improvements and changes, after you've had somebody help you with that perhaps, then reassess later how you did on improving in these areas. All right, let's move on to security. This is a big one. We did an entire episode on this. But security, I'm going to talk about it in 2 phases. First of is kind of what is it that it means when we look at it online, and what is the impact on that? And then Adam's going to give us a lot more detail on those topics. But when you navigate to a site now, if you're using Chrome in particular, and of course Google comes into play here, and you see a not secure, like the example I have here on the screen, it means that Chrome and Google have identified this as a potentially insecure site, a site that doesn't have the right security features, namely an SSL certificate, and we'll talk about what that is in a moment. But it is something that's now coming up like this, and or what's happening over time is you might get a screen similar to this. It's not always going to look like this, but it can go anywhere from it's a notice at the top of the screen in the address, but it'll still display your screen, your website, or it could completely block your website and notify the user that's trying to navigate to your website that this site is potentially not secure. Now, Adam, you've got some great statistics on when this happens, when there's a security issue, as to how many people simply just don't proceed.
Yeah, Google has really been cracking down on this the last few years, last few months especially. There's statistics out there from reputable sources like HubSpot and other places that say 85% of users say that they would not go on a site if it's labeled as not secure. So basically what that's meaning is if you have a not secure website, if you don't have an SSL certificate there, you're losing a potential of 85% of your visitors, because the reality is they are being shown that your website is not secure. And so if you could track it, you would see a drastic decrease in your site's visitors over the last year or so.
Yeah, it's big. I know for me personally, I won't navigate to a website that throws up a screen in front of it unless I really know where I'm going, and I specifically know that they just haven't updated their SSL certificate. So what it looks like when it is working, when your site is secure, is you'll see a little lock next to your address. And in particular, to test that, if you'll put an S in front of or after the HTTP, the S stands for secure, and try to go to your site. And if there's a lock, that means you're good. That means you have an SSL certificate, either because you did so or somebody was doing it for you. But you're good. If you see that at the top of the screen next to your website address, then you already have an SSL certificate. If you don't, if you see something other than the lock, or you see something like the not secure, or certainly if there's a page that gets presented before someone goes to your site, then you've got an issue. And ideally what you want to do is have somebody who on a different machine, a different IP address, as it's called technically, to make sure that you're getting a good reading on what's going on. Now, in addition, this isn't required by Google necessarily, but it's a good practice, and that is to have a privacy policy somewhere on your website. Most people, including myself, will have a link at the bottom of every page that then if they click on it, it says privacy policy. You probably have seen that on other websites. And if you click on it, it states, in my case, what we're going to do with your data. Now, in my site, we just collect things like email addresses and names and maybe a phone number. But you have to tell people what you're going to do with that data and how you're going to keep it secure. So it's all related to the overall security of your website. Now, let's talk about SSL certificates in specific. As I mentioned, Adam and I, and you may have listened to it, did an episode of the podcast on this topic, episode 210. So, I encourage you to go and listen to that episode if you want more. But I'm going to let Adam take over, and let's start with what is an SSL certificate, Adam.
Okay, so basically an SSL certificate stands for Secure Sockets Layer. That's probably Greek to all of us. Basically, in layman's terms, what it is it's your business's passport to be legitimate and conduct activity on the internet. We used this example in the podcast. We said, anytime you travel, especially overseas, what do you need with you? You need your passport to leave the US, to go into another country, to come back into the US. It proves your legitimacy, it proves your identity. An SSL certificate is the same thing for your business online. So that's what it is. Why do we need one? Because of the statistic we just saw, 85% of users say they don't go onto a website that's not secure. It's important because Google, as well as other main search engines, have been really cracking down on it for their sake, for the sake of their users. They're seeing, all of us have heard of major hacks to big companies over the last few years. It's a hot topic. It's a real thing. It's critical, and it's becoming even more critical, especially for small business users.
Yeah, I had no idea what an SSL certificate was until earlier this year, and that's, again, as Adam mentioned, because now, well, you've told me before, Adam, that Google has been caring about it for some time, but now it's becoming painful if I don't have one, right?
Yes, it's been something in the works. I think it was around 4 years ago that they started the process of saying, hey, this is big enough that we're going to start requiring it. Obviously, there's hundreds and thousands of millions of sites out there, Anything like that takes time. This past October, just a few months ago, they finally cracked down, and that's when they started showing the warning to sites when you go into a site that's not secure. That was step number one. Step number two is it's a bigger warning, a bright red warning. So yes, it's becoming a lot more critical.
Right, and it's getting rolled out. So just because you don't see that warning when you go to your website now doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Obviously, they're rolling that out. It has been and now is affecting more, though, for those of you who might be familiar with the way, and we'll get into it a bit more when we get into search engine optimization. But one of the many factors, and we don't know them all because it's secret, but one of the many factors that we do know that goes into our ranking on Google search results is security, right?
Yeah, that's one of the top things. Absolutely.
All right, so let's begin to talk about how we get an SSL certificate.
Yeah, by nature, SSL certificates are very technical. I'll even be honest, we have a huge technical team that we work with, and when we provide SSL certificates for someone whose website we do not host, it gets complicated, even for the professionals. So how do we get one? The easiest and the simplest and probably by far the cheapest option for you is if you have a website and you know that it's not secure, go to your current website provider. Whoever that would be. I mean, if you have GoDaddy or someone else hosting your website, reach out to them, whoever is hosting your website currently, and say, hey, I need to secure my website. 9 times out of 10, they're going to have a good option for you. It's not going to be all that expensive. It's not a huge investment for your business, and the rewards are going to be huge.
Right, that's the route I took because I've got my sites either hosted on GoDaddy or on HostGator, and so they offer options. I will tell you that it's not easy, and I'm fairly technical, so you might need to get help just to help you navigate through that, but they are improving their ability to sell you and apply an SSL certificate on their online sites. In a couple of occasions, I had to call support for GoDaddy because it didn't quite work like it's supposed to, but I fought through it and got SSL certificates. And then I had Adam help me with a couple of other related things on my websites. So we're going to summarize this point at the end, but it really depends. This answer as to where do I get my SSL certificate, but we're going to summarize at the end the different options for either getting a website or getting your website fixed. Again, as Adam mentioned, a lot of it depends on where your site lives now, where it's hosted. Do you have an IT person on staff or that you outsource to now? Do you have somebody that provides a hosted website for you? Often, maybe for a fee, but a nominal fee, they'll provide that service of adding your SSL certificate. For our Wild Blue Car Wash website, for example, that's one that we have. We have somebody that we pay a monthly fee to, and they built and service ongoingly our website, so they did that for us as part of the X number of hours that we get for free every month. So that could be an option for you if you have somebody that is your technical provider for your website. If you don't have a website, then this will be easy because it'll be a key thing that you're going to want to make sure to include as either you build it or you have somebody build it for you. And then barring all of that, you can hire someone like Adam to at least assess what's the best option for you if you're not able to figure it out. And then Adam will tell you if it's best for him to help you or if you want to engage somebody else that you already have either on site or that you partner with to add that SSL certificate. This is not an easy topic, folks. I wish I could make it easy, but it's not. But it must be addressed. Right now, in fact, on your scorecard, I'm going to ask you to give yourself a 0 in that category if you don't have an SSL certificate. And again, very easily, the way you know that, if you navigate to your site and at the top you don't see that lock, especially if you do HTTPS, which is the secure part, / and then your website. If you don't see a lock in Chrome in particular, behaves slightly different in other websites, then you do not have either an SSL certificate or it's not properly implemented. What I'd like you to do then now is assess yourself in category number 4. And this one's pretty straightforward, I think. You either have it or you don't. All right, very good. All right, that's security. Let's talk about search engine optimization, another big topic. And again, Adam and I did a separate episode on this, but let's start with defining what is SEO. And at a very high level from a business perspective, it's really about Google, because Google dominates the search world, and it's basically about getting found. So it's the techniques and the application of certain things that we apply to our website, some technical, some in the way of the content, some is like things like the SSL certificate, that Google takes into consideration to decide where or if at all they're going to display you when someone searches for a relevant term or a relevant keyword. In the case of my car wash, if somebody searches car washes in Colorado Springs, then Google is taking in various factors to determine where I'm going to end up in that list of what's called an organic results, meaning the natural results that I don't pay for, that Google determines these are the most relevant answers, potential answers rather, to what this person has just searched for. And we can hate Google for it or not, but at the end of the day, as Adam touched on, what they're trying to accomplish is very simple. They're trying to be the go-to site, and they are, when people are searching for information on the internet. And one of the ways that they're assuring that is that you are likely to find in those first few listings, or certainly on the first page of results, what you're looking for. And they track that. They know that you might have clicked on something and it wasn't what the website purported to be, or it didn't have what you were looking for. And they're continuously fine-tuning such that you as a user of Google get the results you want, which is that on the first page or on the map, you find what you're looking for. So our goal as business owners with websites is pretty basic and simple, although sometimes it's very hard to achieve, especially this part of appearing on the first page. But essentially, unfortunately for us, especially if we're competing in a saturated field, in a saturated market, that's going to depend on how likely it is that you are very quickly going to get on the first page. But it is all about getting on the first page. Furthermore, it's about being above the fold, as they say. That's an old term from the newspaper days, which is that you're in the top half of the screen. That's an even more impossible task nowadays that people are searching on a small device like a phone. And we're talking about the organic search results. We can pay to have Google place us at the top or on the right-hand side. That's not what we're talking about here. That's a separate topic, which we'll touch on briefly. So that's what SEO is at a high level from a business perspective. And the goal as business owners is to have people find us. And we know the statistics show that people don't go very far beyond the first page of results in a particular category. So if our competitors are appearing in that first page or on the map, that's likely where people are going to go if they weren't looking for you specifically, right? If somebody searches for Wild Blue Car Wash, they're going to find me. But if somebody searches for car washes in Colorado Springs, I better be on the map or on the first page. Now, Adam's going to walk us through some of what he calls the top 5 SEO factors that we need to consider.
Yeah, like Henry said, number 1 is content. In all reality, Google looks at over 200 different things when they rank a website. Obviously, we don't have time to go over all 200 of them, so we're just going to touch on the top 5. These are my top 5. They're not necessarily Google's top 5, although we tried to do that. Number 1, content is king. Content proves that you're legitimate, that you know what you're talking about, and that you care. Basically, content is what draws people to your website. If they're out searching for something and they have a question, you want to be there to answer that question for them. That's part of what content does. Just a few really quick tips on how to write good content. Number 1, mention your name at least 3 times in anything you want. That's good for your brand. It's good to get you out there. Provide external links in things that you write. Second tip, get somebody to proofread anything that you write, even if it's your sixth grader niece. Get somebody to proof it for you. I could tell you funny stories of how I didn't get someone to proof it and had to pay the penalty for it. Second thing is give free resources. People love things that are free, even if it's just tips, things that you can benefit your readers for in your content. Provide tips. for them. Second thing, in the top 5 on SEO factors would be security. We obviously touched on that already. The big thing here is get an SSL certificate for your site. It's one of the biggest things that you can do to help your site rank higher. The second thing would be what Henry touched on a second ago, a privacy policy. There's tons of resources out there that are free to help you get a privacy policy template to help you write this. It shouldn't take long. Do it. Over in the United Kingdom and Europe, they've already cracked down on privacy policies and things like that. I could see that coming to the future in the States, so make sure you have a privacy policy. Third thing in SEO tips, speed. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but speed is actually a huge factor in the last 3 or 4 years. A statistic says that small businesses see an average of 11% less conversions for every second that your website takes to load. Now, this is interesting. Follow this. Google recommends that a site take about 3 seconds to load on a mobile device. The average speed that it takes to load a site on a mobile device is 22 seconds. So to do the math there, for every second, you're losing 11%. If you do the math, you can figure out you're losing quite a lot of conversions, people coming to your site and leaving right away if your site takes forever to load. So speed is a huge topic.
And I want to touch on something. I want to rant about something for a moment. That's one of my big concerns for small business owners, and that is that this topic of SEO is one where a lot of small business owners are exposed to being taken for a lot of money. You're going to get bombarded, I'm sure you have already, with all kinds of offers to put you on the first page of Google. And I would say to you, unfortunately, that most of them, they're not scams, but they're overselling what they can deliver. SEO takes time, it takes commitment, it takes a methodical approach, and including some of these factors and everything that we talked about. It's not an overnight thing, and it's not something you do once. You got to continuously work on these things, primarily your content. So please don't overpay for someone who promises you to put you on the first page of Google. Be very careful and cautious. Make sure you know who you're working with there. If anything, call Adam. I can vouch for his credibility and his ethics, but there's a lot of people out there taking a lot of money from small business owners for SEO.
Yeah.
All right, responsiveness we touched on before, Adam, but I'll let you take over there.
Yeah, I could tell horror stories with the amount of money people.
Yeah, we're both very passionate and have seen this happen to a lot of people, so avoid that, please.
Yeah. So responsiveness, number 4, 60% of all searches that happen online are conducted on a mobile device. So that proves to you also the importance of having a mobile-friendly website. If your site is not mobile-friendly, what do? If it's not mobile-friendly, it's old enough that you should probably redo your website. If you have an older site and it's not secure, you can add an SSL certificate. But it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to take a non-responsive website and make it responsive without basically paying the money to do the entire thing over again.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a painful one. I paid for my Top-It, my frozen yogurt business. I paid $5,000 to have that website developed back in 2011. That was before this ability now the technology has to make a site that's both mobile friendly and PC friendly. Back then, you used to have a separate mobile site, and maybe some of you remember that. That doesn't cut it anymore, although that's one way to maybe technically get around it. But as Adam said, we had to completely abandon that website. It was built on an older technology and had to rebuild the website using what's called WordPress, and I'll come back to that. But the responsiveness is critical. I make this mistake, because I work in my office at my PC all day, and so when I'm looking at a website, it looks beautiful and it's big and I have a huge screen, but that is not how the majority of your customers or prospective customers are finding you online.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, last one, on-page optimization. We touched on this a little bit earlier. Basically, the structure, the behind the scenes of your website. That includes all of the technical stuff, the tags, the keywords, the titles, the schema tags, the size of your images, your links, your page descriptions, all of that stuff. When your site was developed, it should have all been implemented then. Oftentimes it's not. There's people out there who do shady jobs when they build websites. So how do you know if your website has solid on-page optimization? I know we were going to get to this in a second, but there's lots of free tools out there to be able to say, here's how you rank on on-page optimization.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that you can fix on an existing website. In fact, I hired Adam to do so on a couple of my websites because this does get technical. You're not going to be able to do this yourself. Even I, it's a little bit above my head. I'm able to do the content part. I can at least identify and was able to get my host providers to do the SSL. I can test the speed. I can do some things there because I can reduce the size of my images, which is often the culprit. I can certainly identify whether I have a responsive website or not, but the on-page optimization, you're going to need technical help on. We did a whole episode on this, episode 216 on search engine optimization. So if you haven't listened to that, I encourage you to do so. So on your scorecard now, we're at category 5. So assess yourself there, and also go back as we touched again on content, category number 2. We went back and talked about the importance of that, especially the updated frequently component. And blogging, which we'll come back to in a moment, is one way that you might be able to update your content more frequently. But it really is a matter is that the content that people are looking for when they search for what you offer, either because you sell or you offer that service or provide that information. But on category number 5, make a couple notes there on where you might be able to do next. Check off the things you have or circle a couple things and give yourself a score. Adam alluded to this other tool that he offers on his website. So Adam, introduce this free tool.
Yeah, this free tool is what we do quite often for prospective clients, for current clients, basically just to test their website. It's $49 value, completely free, absolutely no obligation. Basically, what you do is and we can do it for you if you want. Basically, go into our website, put in your business website, your business information. You can put in some of your competitors if you'd like that, and then it runs a very comprehensive, very detailed website report. Within about half an hour, you'll get it emailed directly to you. It's about 15 pages. So the first page is what you're seeing here is very simple. It's an overall score, 42 out of 100 is this example. Very easy to understand. It ranks pretty much all of the categories that we've been talking about here. Your on-page optimization, this one here has 21 out of 40. Mobile friendly, your keyword rankings, your off-page optimization, your social, and your competitor analysis. So basically, you're getting an overall score of your website. And yeah, go ahead, Henry. You were going to.
No, I was just going to say that example of that report there, that's on one of my websites.
Yeah, and we should actually run again. See how you've improved since you've done quite a few things.
Correct. And 100 is pretty rare, if not impossible. Is that fair?
I've never seen 100. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the other tool that we're going to share with you here overall, if we take a step back from an online marketing perspective, because often what we're challenged with is where do we start? So I want Adam to quickly walk through at a high level this online marketing checklist and where you should start.
Yeah, we put together an online marketing checklist, basically marketing 101 for small businesses. Basically, I interact with small business owners all the time, and we hear this all the time. Okay, I know I need to do marketing, but where in the world do you start? There's so many things. So we've made a very simple checklist. The first one being take a nap. It's kind of funny, but basically a NAP stands for your name, your address, and your phone number. You would be surprised how many small business owners we come in contact with who do not have the basic contact information decided on and clear on their website. So number one, clarify that, get it clear on your website, get it clear online, register everything you need to. Second one, first impression. What is your first impression of your business online? It's always your website. Because it's the first impression for your business, make sure that it's done really well. Because if it's a poor impression, you're going to lose people right away.
Yeah, so not only does it need to look good, but more importantly is what we talked about with the conversational copy, the language that you use, make sure it's understandable, make sure that it's clear when I arrive at your website, what is this about and what do you want me to do?
Absolutely. So once you have your contact information and your website set, the second thing that we always recommend doing is search engine optimization. One, because this helps to strengthen your website, your domain, the structure of your website, all those things we've been talking about. But it also helps your website to be found more, which is basically what we want in the end. We're going to touch on number 4 here, your target audience. This should obviously go back to the foundations of your business when you did a business plan or anything like that. But we're putting it in here because After you do your website and search engine optimization, any marketing beyond that point should be very clear and specific. For example, if you're selling steel or industrial steel to large manufacturing companies, should you be on Facebook and other social media platforms? Maybe not. But if your target audience is mothers and teenagers and teachers and everything like that, should you be on social media? Probably so, because that's where your target audience is.
Yeah. And I would argue, Adam, that this aim well, in other words, understanding your market, who your audience is. If you don't have a website, you would want to start here. This is marketing 101. You really have to understand clearly who your target audience is. And then, like Adam says, that drives other things like social media.
Yes, exactly. We've had several clients come to us and say, hey, I don't have a website, but I want to do some social media. And we often say, you know what? Best place to start is back up at step number 1 and step number 2. But social media is the way to go these days. I mean, I'm sure we all know statistics that say how many people are on and all that kind of stuff. So if your target audience is on social media, your business needs to be present there.
Yeah, my advice there is pick 1 or 2 platforms that best match your target audience and start there. Don't try to be everywhere at once. And then we mentioned blogging, Adam, and that's a good way if you tie in a blog to your website, or if your website has a blog component, like a lot of websites, a lot of people are starting to do that. That's a great way to have fresh and relevant content if you blog on a regular basis, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Content is king. Last one here is pay-per-click ads. Again, we put this here as last. It is a huge, it can be very beneficial to a business. It can also be very beneficial. So before you put out the bucks to do pay-per-click ads, you need to make sure you have a solid foundation, that you're bringing people back to a website that they're going to want to interact on.
Yeah, no bigger waste of money than paying for ads on Facebook or on Google, and then that people click on it and they go to a website where it's confusing or there's no call to action, and you've just wasted a bunch of money.
Yeah, I just added a text here in the chat to our landing page for the business checklist we've done with Ustas. We've done this checklist. You can get in depth. You can watch the video on it. You can also download some free resources. We've done basically how to set up a Facebook page for small businesses, how to use Twitter, how to use Instagram, how to use LinkedIn as a small business owner. All free resources, basically helping small business owners to get out there and appropriately use social media and things like that.
Great stuff. All right. So what are your options? I wanted to summarize at a very high level, and I'm generalizing here to an extent, but what are your options either to get a website built, or if you've got an existing website, to do the things we've highlighted here and that you've made a note on your scorecard, whether it's an SSL certificate or improve the content or the layout? I see it as you basically have 3 options. You can either do it yourself, and I do a lot of this myself. I've developed a website using Squarespace. Wix and Squarespace are the leaders right now. There are others out there, but it's a very template-driven, drag and drop type of design. You don't need much technical knowledge, although I would argue that to get beyond the basic templates is going to test you technically a little bit, especially in the area of HTML. For the more advanced users, which I have graduated to, you can use WordPress, a very functional platform. But again, you've got to have some technical knowledge there. And so you can do it yourself. Like I said, I did it myself when it came to the SSL certificate. I've designed and developed my own websites, but that's partly because I'm a techie. If I stop and coach myself, I would say, Henry, what are you doing spending that kind of time? You could have hired somebody to do it. My problem, as it is with most small business owners, is just I don't want to pay $10,000, $15,000 to have a website designed. And so that's why I typically go the do-it-yourself route, but I have a technical background. Second is, as we mentioned earlier, you might have already someone that you pay a monthly fee to perhaps, and they maintain your website. Maybe they give you a certain number of hours a month for changes. They host the website for you. They're a full service provider, if you will. There's lots of them out there. So you might have an existing website under that situation. In that case, what I would do is take the scorecard and then run this free tool. You see the little image there representing. Run that free checkup tool. And Adam doesn't care where you take that. Take that to your current team, your current partner, and have a conversation with them about where you want to get started with fixing some of these things, with, of course, prioritizing. And if an SSL certificate is what you need, that should be at the top of the list. And then thirdly, hire it done. And that usually makes the best sense. But as I touched on, as small business owners, we've got tight budgets. We don't want to spend thousands of dollars. And in a lot of cases, we should not be spending that kind of money, especially for an informational website. So be very careful. So your options are to hire a development vendor. And again, I've had good success, and then I've heard all kinds of horror stories. So be very careful who you select, or select somebody like Ustas, which is Adam's company, who I refer to more as a marketing partner. He's got monthly packages at a low price point that gives you a basic website and then ongoing support, including all of that search engine optimization stuff. All of that is included. So at a high level, that's the way I see the three options. A lot of it is going to depend on what you currently have in the way of a website now and who's supporting it. A lot of it is going to depend on your technical ability and your budget. And a lot of it's going to depend then on what type of website you need. Now, Adam, you can speak to, you all do a free consultation, so that might be a good step after doing the website checkup tool, right?
Yeah, that's true. Anytime we have a prospective client or anybody at least mildly interested, we always ask to do a free consultation. It just gives us an opportunity to learn about the business. We don't go into it assuming that we're the best fit for this business, but it gives us an opportunity to learn, ask questions, find out about who the business is, what their goals are, and then we're able to present, if we feel like it's a good fit, we're able to present what we would do and our plans. Like Henry said, we've built different plans geared towards small businesses, priced for small businesses. They're all-inclusive packages so that you can just do it and not have to think about what needs to happen afterwards.
All right, so by now you should have completed your scorecard if you are following along. You've given yourself a score in each of the 5 categories, added that up, and then you kind of see a score range key at the bottom. This is just, at a high level, generally speaking. Don't beat yourself up too much here. What I'm hoping this does for you is it helps you identify what action you're going to take to either get started with developing a website or improve the website that you have. What I would challenge you with, as I often do when I close my podcast episodes, is what's one thing that you're going to take away from what we talked about today in the Q&A for those of you who are going to stay for that. What's one thing you're going to take away and take action on this week? It's already Wednesday, but what are you going to do with this information and take one step? Often, I know I'm guilty of this. I'll go to a webinar or an education class or a workshop, and all great stuff, but then I don't take a lot of action in actually implementing what I learned. So I challenge you to do one thing, even if it's a phone call, even if it's going and doing the assessment tool at the Ustas site, reaching out to one of us, or scheduling a call with your current technical provider. Do one thing this week that moves you forward into improving your website. And I would challenge you that if you don't have an SSL certificate, that should be at the top of your list. And you have my contact information as well. I'm assuming most of you either found out about this webinar either through the podcast or through an email from Adam. Adam, again, offers all types of online marketing services as well as, of course, website services as we talked about today. And he does a free consultation. You see his phone number and email on the screen now. For me, obviously, if you haven't listened to our podcast, I invite you to do so. It's a free audio on-demand show that's available on iTunes as well as on our website, thehowabusiness.com. And I'm also a business coach. So if you're interested in chatting with me about business coaching, I also offer a free 1-hour consultation. So just send me an email, or you can go to my website and submit a request on the website as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. And those of you who stayed till the end, we had a lot of people coming and going. Thanks for being with us. If you have any ideas beyond the poll on other topics you'd like to see, or if you have any questions, you know where to find us. Have a good evening, and I wish you the best with your endeavors with your website.